Good morning and welcome back to our third Anchored in the Word Morning Reflection. I hope you're having a great Wednesday morning or afternoon, evening, whenever you're listening to this podcast or watching this. And today we're going to talk about another aspect of enduring persecution, and that is wisdom from God when we get in difficult situations and we will be called to testify to the truth. And in this passage of Scripture, he's talking about persecution, how people could be dragged before a magistrate or dragged before some tribunal. And when they're in that situation, they're going to be under a tremendous amount of pressure. And they're going to be grilled with all kinds of questions. And the question is, how are they supposed to respond in those situations? Well, this passage is going to give us a very, very important principle for us to think about. And that principle is that God gives us wisdom when we desperately need it. So let's turn our Bibles to Luke chapter 21. We'll read the passage and then we'll key in on that little section that talks about how we're to prepare for these situations. It says, "But before all these, they shall lay their hands on you and persecute you, delivering you up to the synagogues and into prisons, being brought before kings and rulers for my name's sake. And it shall turn to you for a testimony. Settle it therefore in your hearts, not to meditate before what you shall answer. For I'll give you a mouth of wisdom, which all your adversaries shall not be able to gainsay nor resist." Now that's a really important statement. Settle it in your heart, not to meditate before you shall answer. I will give you a spirit and a mouth of wisdom. Great statements, very important. He goes on to say this, that you will be betrayed by parents, brethren, kinsfolk, friends. Some of you shall be put to death. You'll be hated of all men for my name's sake, but there shall not an hair of your head perish. In your patience possess ye your souls. So let's zero in on that middle section talking about wisdom. Realize that God will give you the wisdom that you need when you desperately need it the most. And so notice what he says in verses 14 and 15. Settle it therefore in your hearts, not to meditate before what you shall answer. I will give you a mouth and wisdom, which all your adversaries shall not be able to gainsay nor to resist. Amazing statement. Before you get in the situation, don't obsess over it. That's what he's saying. In other words, this is going to be a heavy burden to carry. I mean, he's talking about the hardship of the last days. And Christ didn't give you this information because he wants you to be burdened by it and he wants you to be discouraged and weighed down. No, he had a different purpose. He wants you to have perspective, but also encouragement. He wants the good and he wants the bad to be laid side by side and us to see it in correct proportion. And so we have this principle in front of us. Don't obsess over this information. Settle it now in your hearts, not to meditate before you shall answer. Don't sit there and go, well, if they say this, I'm going to say this. And if they say this, I'm going to counter with that. And if they ask this question, how am I going to respond? And obsessing over a conversation. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know when it's going to happen. You don't know how it's going to play out. Don't worry about it. Just walk with God today. And when the time comes, he'll give you what you need. That's the sense of it. But there's a second side. Rest in his promise to provide wisdom. I will give you a mouth and wisdom. That's a promise from God. Rest in the power of that wisdom. All your adversaries shall not be able to gainsay nor resist. And so we see that God gives comfort by saying, you don't have to obsess. God's going to give you what you need, and it's going to be sufficient. That's the idea. And, we may never find ourselves in this particular scenario, but the principle applies to us in all of our daily lives. When we have difficult circumstances and difficult conversations that we're anticipating, God's going to give us exactly what we need. He is committed to guiding his children whenever they're in crisis. And so I'm reminded of James 1:5. If any of you lack wisdom, ask God, which giveth to all men liberally. He's generous, and he upbraideth not. It shall be given him. If you are in the midst of a tough season and you are anxious and worried about conversations you perhaps think could happen, or they're going to come, you don't know how they're going to play out, take these truths to heart. Realize that God will give you what you need. He'll give it to you immediately when you're in the situation, and in fact, it will be sufficient. May God help us to trust him in these matters. Have a blessed rest of your day. Lord willing, we'll meet again tomorrow. Bye now.